Hey Spookaroos, I'm cutting into the episode early to point out a couple things that I have learned since recording this episode. First thing that I want to point out is Susan mentions that she had heard that Ron Goldman's sister would be recording her own podcast that would be released around the same time this one came out. That podcast has been released. It is called Confronting O.J. Simpson with Kim Goldman. I just listened to the first episode today and it is excellent, and I highly recommend that you check it out if you are at all interested in the murder of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson. It's a very interesting podcast, and it really does a good job giving us more info on Ron Goldman as a person and humanizing him in a way that we haven't been able to experience so far. Also, towards the end of the show, I am talking about the slow-speed Bronco chase. That, of course, was big news. I mentioned at one point that I say O.J. Simpson held a gun to his head, and it kind of sounds like I'm saying that he held a gun to A.C. Cowling's head. I meant that O.J. was holding the gun to his own head. So when that moment comes up, that's what I'm talking about. And finally, Susan and I both agree it would be a good idea to give you guys the number of the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That's what this is, the number here in the United States, that if you feel that you or someone you love is in danger, you call this number and hopefully they will be able to help you out. The phone number is 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233. And if you are in this situation, our thoughts are with you, and we hope that you find the courage and the strength, really, to do what needs to be done to protect yourself and those you love. Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinells, and tonight I am very happy to be once again joined by a true blue spookaroo, one of the originals, Susan Barrett. Welcome back, Susan.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, we did not do this on purpose. I just happened to pick a night that was relatively free for me, and I said, hey, how about, this Wednesday coming up? And you said, yeah, that works for me. But we are talking tonight about the O.J. Simpson murder. Well, I shouldn't say that. I should say the Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman murders, most likely committed by O.J. Simpson. And it happens to be the 25th anniversary of that event tonight, this very evening.
It's amazing. I love the timing.
We should explain that we're not doing like a big overview of the entire story of the murders and all that stuff. We are strictly talking here tonight about the book, If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer, by O.J. Simpson and a ghostwriter, which we'll get into, and the Goldman family. So there's a lot of times in researching this book, well, not researching, but reading the book, that I wanted to stop and look in to see if what he was saying was true or accurate, or if that's what came out in the trial or what. And I stopped myself because I said, no, that's beyond the scope of the episode that you're trying to do. Just talk about the book.
Yes. Yeah, I did kind of the same thing. I was tempted to do some additional research. I think this was something current as of today. It looks like Ron Goldman's sister is doing a podcast about it that starts today, I think, if I was like looking at a current posting online, so that should be interesting. But I tried to kind of stick to what our assignment was,
and it was a rough assignment too, by the way, which I guess we'll get into all that. Let me get the plugs out of the way. So of course I want to point everyone to the website spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. They both take you to the same place. There you can listen to each and every episode, including the ones no longer available on iTunes. And you can also find links to all of our social media. We are at Spooky Ass Shit on both Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the public page at facebook.com/spookyas. And if you really want to get into talking about O.J. Simpson and conspiracy theories and all that kind of good stuff, well, you can do that in our closed group, which was created thanks to Susan. And it was her idea. But this is so that we can talk privately without the weight of public judgment and family members judging us for the twisted things that we like to talk about.
Exactly right. It's a Spookaroo only safe space.
Yeah, and speaking of Spookaroos, I want to remind everyone I am currently doing a GoFundMe to raise funds to help bring you this show. I'm testing this out instead of Patreon first. I wanted to let you guys specifically know what I would be spending the money on. I'm happy to report that we've got enough money so far to get that digital recorder, which will make it possible for me to go out in the field and do field interviews. I can't wait to bring it with me when I do my witch finding in Salem and interview some of the interesting characters that I meet out on those streets and some of the cool people around town, and also bring it to horror conventions and just make it easier to get around in general.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool.
I'm glad you're able to do that.
Hopefully this weekend I'll be able to order that with the first part of the donations, but I'm going to leave it up till at least the end of June. So that way, if people are late in listening to shows or they don't have money at a certain point in the month, but they might later on, and they want to donate, obviously nobody owes me anything. But, if you are a fan of the show, if you appreciate the show, if you want to support it, see it get bigger, and help me out a little bit, that's the way that you can do it. So that is gofundme.com/spookaroos19. I think we've said everything that needs to be said, right?
I think so. You're the professional. Let's jump into this OJ situation.
Okay, now the reason that I asked Susan specifically to be on this episode is because last time we talked, Susan, this book came up. We were talking about murderabilia and should criminals, specifically murderers, be able to profit in any way, shape, or form from their crimes.
Exactly, and this is the backstory of this book. I don't know how much you want to get into that.
Oh, let's do it.
There is a lot. Now, we both listened to the audiobook, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The story, as I understand it, so in the book, there is a foreword by, it is Ron Goldman's, who writes the foreword?
Well, the ghostwriter writes one. Was there another one?
No, honestly... yes, the ghostwriter. So in the textbook, there's a totally different foreword that's really detailed, and it has all this involvement with them going on Oprah. But I'm not super clear on what the whole story is. So ghostwriter says he wrote this book with OJ. OJ's attorney or agent later says OJ did not work with this person. This person just wrote the book. If we find like any human on earth to be a more credible witness than OJ, let's go with that. Let's say the ghostwriter wrote this with OJ. So he sort of does a foreword about the process. And then there's the OJ section. The narration is incredible because how many times did you want to punch that guy? Yeah. Like it was so, and I had to keep reminding myself, like, no, the narrator is a nice guy. It's just OJ you're reacting to. There's a end section by Dominic Dunn. So what you essentially learn through all of this is, I guess OJ and the agent wrote the book together. Nobody, I think there was an initial, 400,000 printed, but nobody was actually going to publish or sell it. And it sat around for years. And then OJ basically was trying to get the money from this book to go to a corporation or it's basically pass through income to his oldest daughter, who's
it's in her name.
Prior wife. It's Arnell is the daughter's name. And so the Goldman family kind of comes in and says, well, that's horrible. That's basically you still profiting from this book because it's going to this corporation that's really your daughter, and that's really basically you.
And just to go back to what we were talking about with the Son of Sam laws that are different in every state, and there is no one Son of Sam law. But that actually they're on tricky footing there because he was found innocent in his murder trial. In the criminal trial. However, he was found responsible in the civil trial.
You're right. Well, you're right. And you're right. I was going a little bit kind of off topic because what had happened was the Goldman family had gotten the civil award. So OJ owed them a money judgment. And so it was trying to divert the money from the book around the Goldman family and that judgment
Right.
to the corporation for the daughter. And then I guess what I didn't realize quite before was that so he was getting most of his income from was his NFL pension, and that was exempted from collection on this judgment. So the Goldman family had no way to collect on any assets they could like identify. They couldn't do some kind of garnishment against his pension because it was exempt from that.
Right.
So my understanding is Nicole Brown's sister objected completely to this book being published. And the Goldman family was kind of like, well, if you make sure that it's published in a way that's clear that this guy is a shithead, we're cool with that. That's not what they said. But if you as long as it's sort of not presented in a way that's just gratuitous violence against their family member, meaning the foreword and the endnote, that's okay because it's the only way we're ever going to get the money that this guy owes us. And so we're going to say we want the publishing rights. And that's what they wound up getting. And in the process of that, the cover of the book changed significantly so that the word if is much, much, much smaller, and it has a tagline, Confessions of the Killer.
So when you look at the book from a distance, it looks like it says, I Did It, Confessions of the Killer by O.J. Simpson. But of course it does say if, but it's written very small and it's actually contained in the word I, right? I think.
Yeah, it is barely visible even if you know it's there.
But so yeah, there's as we briefly mentioned earlier, and we won't go into it too much, but there's a lot of back and forth about did OJ actually have anything to do with this book. This ghostwriter says he sat down with OJ and OJ was kind of uncooperative at first and didn't really understand what the book was because he said, all right, we can talk about anything but Nicole. And the guy was like, well, that's what this book is supposed to be about. That's what they paid him allegedly. I think it was $400,000 or maybe $600,000. It was something like that. And OJ walked out actually. And then, was talked back into it and sat down and talked to the guy. And the guy points out that OJ kept saying, like, now this is hypothetical. This is hypothetical. But if I had done it, I would have done it this way. And,
keep in mind, this is hypothetical.
Yeah, he keeps saying that. Even as we get to the part of the book that is the part that everybody's interested in, he takes a break to say, like, now this is hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as you said, now OJ's agent will say that he had nothing to do with it. And that the ghostwriter, it's a pretty convenient excuse either way, because even if he did sit down with this ghostwriter, he could just say, well, I didn't say that's a detail that this ghostwriter invented.
Right.
It kind of works out for him either way. But when you read this book, I don't know, man, it seems like an angry ex telling you about this relationship. And that's really the first 3/4 of the book just reminded me of like that friend who's going through a breakup with someone they probably shouldn't be with, and they shouldn't be together, and they seem to know that they shouldn't be together, but they won't shut up about each other, and they just keep going on, and it's like, I don't need to hear the minutia of every little detail, every little conversation and fight you had. But that's the first like 3/4 of this book, I'd say.
Yeah, and it's not even just kind of complaining about her, but he keeps basically coming back to the police call in like 89 or something, that first one, and blaming her for like the whole thing. It's kind of like, well, now I'm a wife beater. And he never takes responsibility for his, like,
No, he's an innocent angel the whole time.
It's not, yeah, and it's not a credible position to take. Like, he would have done something at the time if that was, if he really didn't hit her in 89.
Yeah. Well, they were just wrestling, he says many times.
Exactly.
He goes on about what a great football player he was, and I guess he was. you
Yeah, the
know.
football piece, I'm not a big football person, but I totally remember the commercials and I remember like who he was. I remember the Naked Gun movies and like I totally remember watching the like in so I was in college when the slow speed chase happened and like everybody was gathered around the TV to watch it.
Yeah, I mean the trial obviously became a big deal, and I knew about OJ then, but I don't think I might have known him from Naked Gun, but that would be it. I don't remember those commercials, and I didn't watch football, so I didn't know him as a player or as an analyst, and neither did my older brother even. So that part didn't register at all with us.
Huh.
But so that's where I was coming from at this time. But anyway, OJ wants you to know he's an amazing football player.
Oh, just a great guy. He's a great guy.
Yeah. And he says Nicole was beautiful and hot tempered and a drug addict who hung out with assholes and junkies.
And this poor, like, she was really young when she got together with him.
18.
It's horrible. I mean, and the way that yeah, so he's very, he says some weird stuff. Like he talks about her having an interior design business, but then later, when he's talking about Paula Barbieri, he says, "Oh, I've never been with a woman who worked before." So he's a little bit demeaning to Nicole, and then like a little bit closer to the murder when he's making those comments about what she was wearing. He was like, she's way too old, like she looks tired and blah blah blah. And this woman was like 35 years old.
Yeah.
It's horrid. And I don't know, it just breaks my heart. Like she was so young. And Ron Goldman was 25. I mean, and she was young. She was a teenager when she got together with him. He's older than her. I would assume whatever her interior design business might have been, he probably like made all the money in the house and controlled all the money in the house. And the way that he even describes their relationship, she's very kind of you could look at it as her behavior is totally typical of like a battered spouse. You know, the kind of weird codependency and the wanting to come back and that stuff. You can see where like I don't know what her life was before age 18, but assuming she was a normal teenager, like her whole adulthood is dealing with OJ Simpson.
Right. And that's if she really did want to come back. And it seems like they were trying to work on things. So, you know, whether it's because she really loved him and really wanted to work on things or because it was for the kids, who knows? But I will say that is something else that OJ like points out again and again and again is that Nicole was obsessed with me. She loved me. She was obsessed with me. She couldn't get enough of me. She wouldn't leave me alone. And I'm telling you, the whole first third of this book is that kind of thing. Like little fights that they had or whatever. And then he's just going on about those things. So I want to jump to more of the meat of the book. And this, it seems to me that it really starts with a call girl who he says worked as an extra on Naked Gun 2. And he says that this call girl came up to him and said, "Hey, I was at a wild party the other night and Nicole and some of her friends were there." So OJ heard this and he went to Nicole and he said, quote, "Nice people don't get knifed to death." And he says he was trying to warn her because he didn't want any criminals or trashy women near his children. That's the other thing he says constantly in the book. He was only ever protecting or trying to help Nicole and protecting his children.
Right. I mean, he's a hero, basically. Yeah, it's like he's just having to manage her behavior. He's just an ass.
Well, I guess we know where Susan stands.
Yeah, I mean, well, the note I have is he keeps saying Nicole is the enemy. He places so much blame on her. Like it just is, it's beyond normal, like divorced people complaining to the point of going like, wow, you have no self-reflection. And like, you
Right.
know, not to say like I can spot a red flag in OJ Simpson now this 20, 25
25
years
years?
later. We literally just said it 25 years later. Um, because we know what we believe happened. We know what was found in the civil trial to be true. Um, but it's like he doesn't even edit himself.
Right. Yeah, which is bad since he didn't technically write this book and had an editor. But that's why I'm saying it really feels like this is someone speaking from passion, not from, you know, so this guy, but I'd say this guy's a good writer in the sense that if he is writing this and he's not taking it verbatim what OJ said, then he's a good writer because he's creating this mood, which is a mood that you would expect. But on the other hand, that don't take that to mean that I'm saying this is a good book, because I definitely did not enjoy hearing, like I said, the minutia of all this bullshit. Like I said, it's like listening to someone who's like in an on again, off again relationship, and you know, like they've been together for years, and you're like, just give
Like
it
this
up.
thing
Like,
is a train wreck. You just got to get
yeah.
off. Like I
Um,
know I wanted to listen to it twice. And I did about 1.5, 1 3/4, but it is not pleasant to listen to him talk about himself or her or anything else.
yeah. So
Although
the
that
other thing,
narrator is fantastic.
he is, yeah, it's very well read. The other thing I want to comment on is a 911 call that Nicole makes. And I think this is very famous. I think a lot of people out there will have heard it. This is the one she calls, and you can hear OJ in the background yelling. This is from October of 1993, which is approximately half a year before, a little over half a year before she is murdered. Uh, OJ says that he and Nicole had a verbal fight. OJ attempted to leave, or did leave, but Nicole begged him to come back. So he went back, but once there, she locked herself in the bedroom. OJ was pissed that she'd call him back to the house and not even open the door to talk to him. So OJ starts yelling. Kato Kalin, who was living on Nicole's property at the time, it's a whole nother thing we'll get into.
Oh, blessed little Kato Kaelin.
Kato Kalin shows up, and OJ starts ranting and raving to him. And he says that this is actually what you hear on the 911 call. It's not him yelling at Nicole. It's him ranting and raving about the situation, yes, but he's talking to Kato. He's not threatening Nicole or anything like that, like you might think he is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, if I play out that scene in my head, it literally makes no sense. His approach seems to be basically that she set him up because he's a victim of all, like he has no responsibility, therefore he's the victim.
Right.
But then why, like so let's just pretend that this is happening to you. If you're in this thing, you have a prior some kind of a case involving a domestic violence thing. The person, same victim, is saying like, get out, come back. You don't go back. Like, as
No.
the attorney here, I'm going to say you don't listen, you don't get your legal advice from your opposing party. Like, don't, it's so, like, it's just not believable. It's not believable to me.
Yeah.
Well, it's not believable that he didn't go there intending to harm her. It's not believable that it would be like a just normal behavior.
Yeah, she also claimed that he broke down a door, the I think it was the back door. And then he says, "No, that was already broken when I got here. I had nothing to do with it." He's telling the police, "Look, I'm just upset because she's hanging out with hookers and she's inviting them to hang out in the house, and my kids are here." And it all basically leads to nothing. And OJ paints himself as an angel, just trying to look out for the kids and Nicole and help Nicole clean up her own life because he still loves her in a way, and she's the mother of his children. And he's very condescending to Nicole here as well. And he says that from then, for a while after that, and while the police were there, she was trying to act like a good little girl.
Oh God, it was horrible. That was awful. Yeah, he is just an ass. I mean, we can talk about the all of the passive aggressive swimming that goes on in this family, like leading up to this.
There's a lot, but before we get into that, I do want to go back to Kato Kalin for a minute because I want to explain what ends up happening with him. And actually, I accidentally did do a little bit more research on this than just what's in the book. So, in the book, OJ says that he told Nicole that she needed to get her own place, even though in the year before her murder, they had agreed that they were going to try to get back together. And they were going to try it for 1 year without living with each other or anything, but just, dating and being with the kids and that kind of thing. And if it seemed like it was going well after a year, then they'd move back in together. Because they tried shorter times and it didn't work, and it always led to an issue.
Well, and he presents this as being her idea, and he breaks up with Paula Barbieri in order to pursue it. So according to him, it's her pushing it.
Well,
but
she's
it was
obsessed
her
with him.
Naturally, and then she keeps pushing to move back into the house.
So he is rejecting this when she says, oh, it's been going great. Come on, it hasn't been a year, but we can do this, and let's get it. What why am I gonna buy a whole new place when I'm gonna be moving in with you? And he says, no, you got to get your own place. So this is how she ended up at the condo or whatever it is on Bundy Drive. And at this point, according to the book, she didn't have room for Kato Kalin in this new place. So she said, hey, OJ, can Kalin stay with you on your property? Because he had guest house. He had like a whole, sprawl. And can Kato stay with you in your guest house? And OJ was, for some reason, like, yeah, no problem. Sure. Great. Even though this was ostensibly a friend of Nicole's, although not a romantic interest as far as we know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like I said, I accidentally learned a little bit more about this because this morning as I was getting ready for work, I had been watching some OJ, news things on YouTube. And then automatically, one of the videos that came up on YouTube after I was watching something was Cato's testimony from the trial. Mm-hmm. And at the trial, he says that he moved in with OJ at OJ's request. And when Marsha Clark is like, well, why did you move in to OJ's property? He's like, well, OJ kind of made it seem like it wouldn't be good for a single man to be living with Nicole. And then like she kind of has to ask him a few times to get him to even like kind of phrase it that way. Because I don't think OJ like came out and said that exactly, is what Kato Kalin was thinking.
Huh.
But he says that OJ like basically wanted him away from Nicole.
Isn't that
while he and Nicole were trying to work things out.
Poor Kato and his role in history. I mean,
yeah. He's America's house guest.
Yep, exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I just thought that was interesting that the stories kind of differ. Like OJ says Nicole wanted it to happen. Kato says OJ wanted it to happen. And I think Kato really came off like in the trial, like he just really kind of wanted nothing to do with it and didn't want to say anything about anybody.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah.
So it's not even like he was trying to defend or demonize OJ. He just wanted to go home. He was just like, I'm just going to say this and then I'm out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, but OJ does say in the book that Nicole was pissed at Kato for living with OJ, even though he says that it was her idea. And he says it doesn't make any sense, but that's how Nicole was acting.
Yeah. She was mad about Kato being a freeloader, and she had given the kids that note to take to Kato.
About him being a freeloader and other
Yeah,
things.
exactly right.
She also had a problem with the maid, Michelle.
Uh-huh.
So much so that they had a physical altercation, and Michelle quit. And OJ says that every day, quote, every day, people were telling him that, OJ, you've got to do something about Nicole. You've got to save Nicole from herself, OJ. And that's a drum that he beats, as we said, consistently throughout this book.
exactly right, because he has to take care of her, and she's hanging around with people who are like doing cocaine and the like Heidi Fleiss girls and whatnot, and he just can't have his kids in that environment.
Right. And he's constantly suggesting that she was on drugs, and at one point he even calls her venomous.
Yeah.
Well, he finally breaks it off with Nicole sometime in May of 93, but then at some point he goes over to check on her. He says just to make sure that she was okay. But he says they end up having like goodbye sex.
Yes. Yeah.
The next day, he hooks back up with Paula Barbieri.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'm going to make something work with her. But then she flies off to Hawaii.
I mean, he's awful. The way that he presents Nicole towards the end, or the way he describes her, is just so awful. So kind of disrespectful, and just like the way that he refers to her as looking like old and tired, but like this is a young person. It's like he's talking to somebody that, I mean, again, we're looking at him with all of this hindsight, but you can really see how much he hates her and just doesn't really think that she's, I don't know what, like his equal maybe.
I think that's a good way to put it. They get together again, like at a cookout party for the kids. And they're not together, but they're, in the same space for the kids. They're trying to make things work, on a friend level for the kids. Nicole comes over and she acts like she lives at OJ's place. She's running around like playing like she's the hostess.
Yes.
Someone rubs somebody's feet. Is it OJ rubbing Nicole's feet or Nicole rubbing his feet? I don't understand, but someone was rubbing somebody's feet.
There's feet.
In front of other people. So other people are seeing these signs of affection and building up his alibi, I suppose. And then Nicole starts ranting about Kato again. And she also mentions that she doesn't like the new maid, Gigi.
Yep.
And she's just got problems with everybody. So every other sentence is, Nicole's a drug dealer, and the kids are in danger, and Nicole's obsessed with me, and I was the one who had to save her from herself. That's basically everything he wants to say.
At no time does he file a motion to change custody or, anything. Like if he's really trying to protect the kids, he does nothing to follow up on that. It's just bitching about Nicole.
Right. So now he says he's finally had it. He calls Nicole. He leaves a voicemail saying he doesn't want to talk to her anymore unless it's about the kids, and she shouldn't try to contact him for any other reason. Now, Nicole's friend Cora comes by to beg OJ to save Nicole from herself.
Oh my God.
And he tells her Nicole isn't his problem anymore. All right, so that's Cora Fishman that we're talking about, and she has a husband, Ron Fishman, who's going to become an important player later on, and I don't want to get him confused with Ron Goldman, so I want to make sure we have those names straight. So it's Cora and Ron Fishman. So this is Cora Fishman saying, OJ, you got to save Nicole. But OJ says, she's not my problem. Now we get to the big day. June 12th, 1994. This is the day of OJ's daughter's dance recital. This is his daughter with Nicole, young daughter, Sydney.
Yes.
OJ was back with Paula at this time. Paula Barbieri wanted to go to this dance recital with OJ. And OJ said, you know what, with all the drama with Nicole and everything, it's probably best if you don't come. And we'll just make it a family thing and I'll see you when I get back. And she was like, well, your family knows that we're dating, so what's the problem? And he said, well, again, just the drama. It's probably just better. And she became upset and thought that he was like trying to hide her or maybe still trying to get with Nicole, who knows. And so this became like a big problem for OJ. Paula was upset. OJ goes to the recital and notices that Nicole is wearing a very short skirt, which he calls inappropriate. He wonders what she thinks she looks like when she looks in the mirror. Does she still think she's a teenager? This is what you were talking about earlier, Susan.
It's so dark.
And I mean, it's a young person we're talking about. Like it's just, he sounds like he's, I don't, dehumanizing her. But again, we know he's going to kill, well, we know he's allegedly going to kill her.
So Cora's husband, Ron Fishman, pulls OJ aside during intermission, and he tells him about all the drugs and wild parties and stuff going on at Nicole's new place. And he says it's wildly out of hand, and that what they know is terrible enough, but that they probably don't know the half of it. OJ is super upset by this. But again, he likes to point out he's only thinking of Nicole and the kids. So it's not because he's jealous or anything like that. It's because he wants to save Nicole from herself, and he definitely doesn't want his kids in this environment where these wild drug orgies happening at the house, and they don't know the half of it. That's something he keeps repeating. He says that went through his mind again and again. We don't know the half of it. We don't know the half of it.
Right. He's, wildly speculating in his own mind. But anyway, we don't know the half of it.
So then there is some controversy about what happens next. The family decides to go to dinner, but OJ doesn't go with them, and he may or may not have been invited to this dinner. The prosecution would later say that he was upset because he didn't get invited, but OJ in the book says, I didn't need an invitation. It's my family. If I wanted to go, I just would have gone, but I wanted to go home and try to patch things up with Paula before I headed off to Chicago because I had a flight to Chicago.
And he really doesn't want us to be confused about the fact that it's his family, and if he wanted to go, he would just go.
He also strangely at the end of this part says that he didn't think the Brown family owed him anything for all the wonderful things he'd done for them, but that he had done many wonderful things for them.
Oh, God.
That just struck me. That came out of the blue. Like, that was just a comment he made.
Yeah, he's just a nut.
Now, next he goes on and on about how he was not in a bad mood at the dance recital. He denounces witnesses who said that he was in a bad mood because there were several witnesses that testified at the trial. Then he opens the very next chapter saying, quote, I was in a lousy mood after the recital. So, which one is it, OJ? But I guess technically he was talking about before and after the recital, so maybe that's his way out. But
I mean, it's all hypothetical anyway. Well, actually, not this part. But
well, that's the thing. He doesn't say like, okay, this is hypothetical part now. I mean, he does point out, like, he'll say, keep in mind this is hypothetical.
Yeah.
But he doesn't say like, okay, this is the part where it's going to be pure, imagination.
Right.
So which is that part and which isn't? Keeps going on about Ron Fishman's comments that they don't know the half of it, keeps going through his head, and he says, this is when I knew I had to do something for the kids. This girl was an accident waiting to happen. He gets home and he complains to Cato about Nicole's short skirt. Then another strange incident he mentions is that he calls a cheerleader who looked like a Playboy pinup that Cato had shown him earlier in the evening and let her know that he was now single again. But he wasn't really single, right? Because he had Paula? Was he just thinking that they had broken up because of the fight earlier? I don't know.
Mean, we didn't even get into Miss Hawaiian Tropic, but, he's just a piece of crap. But yeah, so he's trying to create an illusion of not caring about Nicole, I guess. I don't know.
So he thinks about Paula and how she's mad at him because of Nicole. He's blaming Nicole for being the problem. That Paula is mad at him because of Nicole. Not because of something wrong with their relationship, but because of something Nicole did. He goes to McDonald's with Cato. And OJ thinks back to the dance recital and how cute Sydney looked doing her little dance routine. And it puts him in a dark mood.
Can we jump to a detail about the trip to McDonald's? This is the Bentley through the drive-thru experience, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I just wanted to call attention to that. All right.
I wonder how common that is in Brentwood.
I mean, it struck me in a way. I don't know. Maybe people use like DoorDash or whatever. Oh shoot, I shouldn't have accidentally done like a podcast type promo there, but some other service in this day and age. I don't know. But yeah, that really struck me as just like, oh my God, that's everything these people are.
Okay, put him in a dark mood. So he starts to think about how every time he called Nicole to see about coming over to hang out with or pick up the kids, she made up some excuse why he couldn't. She was making everything as difficult as possible for him, he says. And she wasn't the Nicole that he fell in love with anymore. She was a complete stranger to him. So he gets home and he starts packing for this trip to Chicago. He was going to Chicago to meet with some people from Hertz. He was taking the red eye. But he couldn't stop thinking about Nicole. He calls Paula to apologize for not taking her to the recital, but she isn't answering. He feels that she was trying to punish him in this way. And he thinks that Paula is possibly thinking about leaving him and that he, quote, had Nicole to thank for it.
I mean, it's more of the same stuff. It's the same kind of rhetoric as the now I have a history of being a wife beater because, I let her get away with blah, 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 blah. It's her fault.
Right. Everything's her fault so far. He hasn't done anything. He'll say, like, in the thing, he'll be like, well, I'm no angel, and but I never did drugs and had orgies in front of the kids. And, like, that's kind of how he phrases everything. He's like, I might have cursed here and there, but I never,
And I don't know. I mean, just speculating, my guess is that he probably did some cocaine. I'm not saying in front of the kids, but my guess is he engaged in the exact same behavior that he's complaining about or like projecting onto Nicole.
No, he was sitting there reading his Bible stories. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm just saying.
So this whole time, he's wondering what Nicole is doing that night. He thought back to the night he'd walked in and found Nicole and a guy named Keith, which is a whole nother side plot we're not getting into, but Nicole and Keith going at it on the couch with candles lit all over the place with his kids in the house. Oh, my God. And then he thought back to Ron Fishman's words, we don't know the half of it. Now, this is where I've made the note. Prepare now to enter Fantasyland. Now, we're almost an hour into recording this episode, and we're finally getting to the part that people want to hear about, the part that I wanted to hear about when I was reading the book. This is the actual event, the night of the murder. So OJ, before he begins, takes a moment to tell us to keep in mind this is all hypothetical. He says that a guy named Charlie pulls up. Charlie, who he's never talked about in the rest of the book. And a Charlie who, if he was a real person, OJ has never talked about before nor since. Hypothetical Charlie comes up and tells OJ some guys had told him that they had partied with Nicole and Cora in Cabo. Charlie thinks OJ should talk to her because, he's got to save her. Even though Charlie, he says that he'd met him like at a bar once or twice.
Uh-huh.
I forget exactly what the story was, but he was like some guy that knew a friend of his and met him, a couple times.
Yeah, so now his new best friend and confidant.
Yeah, so OJ becomes furious at this information, and he wants to go to Nicole and, quote, read her the riot act.
He uses that expression so many times that I felt like the first time he read it, I thought I knew what people mean by that. By the end of having listened to the book, I was like, what exactly is he thinking like that's a euphemism for? That's an expression he uses a lot. Read her the riot act. I'm going to read her the riot act. And you think it involves kind of yelling, but I think he also uses it around stuff that sounds like physical stuff.
Well, he tells Charlie, get into the Bronco so that they can go to Nicole's and scare the shit out of her. That's another quote.
Mm-hmm. Like you do. Totally normal.
With an acquaintance who randomly pulled up at your house and, okay.
Yeah.
Charlie tells OJ it isn't a good idea, and OJ says, fuck that. He's tired of playing the understanding ex-husband.
Oh, my God.
If anything, He'd been too supportive of Nicole after their breakup, encouraging her to date other men. The shit has been eating away at him forever, and he's going to get on with his life. It's time to get this shit under control. I should warn everybody now. Of course, we do swear on this show. Cursing is in the title twice. But tonight, there's going to be a lot of swearing. A lot of fucks and motherfuckers and that kind of language. So just to prepare you, that's coming up. They park in an alley behind Nicole's condo. Charlie says this is a bad idea. What if she's with someone? And OJ says she'd better not be, not with my kids in the house. OJ puts on his knit cap and gloves that he keeps in his Bronco for those mornings when it's nippy on the golf course. Charlie says, "What the fuck? You look like a burglar." And OJ says, "Good." Now, why? I don't know. Maybe he thought he was going to go up and scare her in that way, that he's going to look like a burglar. I don't know. He reaches under his seat and picks up a knife. And he points out that it was a very nice limited edition knife, which he kept on hand for the crazies. But keep in mind, this is all hypothetical.
For the crazies, yeah.
He hypothetically has a nice limited edition knife that he's going to tell you all these details about. But it's not real. It's just hypothetical.
Yeah.
Charlie tells OJ to put the knife back, and Charlie snatches it out of OJ's hand. OJ tells him to relax, but he leaves the Bronco without the knife. OJ goes to the back gate, which he already knew was broken from his previous visits, and he knew that even if you just push it just a little bit, the lock would give if you nudged it in just the right spot, so that, it's locked but not locked. He had pointed this out to Nicole and asked her to get it fixed, but she had never done so. He looks through the windows and sees candles flickering, and he hears music playing, like Nicole is expecting someone for romantic company. Of course, this harkens back to when he caught her with Keith, he would say, when there were candles and, he caught her going at it on the couch with him.
Well, I mean, these people their divorce has been done for like 2 years at this point. But continue.
OJ wonders who is coming over at this time of night, because now it's, 10:30-ish? Somewhere in that range. He wonders if Faye will be coming by with a bunch of her boy toys so that they and Nicole could get all wild and dirty while his kids were sleeping upstairs.
I mean, it's all, the way he describes it is like, again, I mean, a lot of it, I want to give the narrator like credit for the way it's read, but it's really like lascivious, and you're just like, OJ, like, what are you, like, are you upset about your kids, or are you masturbating thinking about this?
Yeah. Just as OJ is getting seriously steamed about thinking about this whole, wild orgy that he's creating in his head, he hears the back gate squeak open. OJ sees a young guy walk through like he owns the fucking place. He was young and good looking with a thick head of hair. He saw OJ and froze. OJ didn't recognize him, but he would later learn that this young man's name was Ron Goldman. OJ says, "Who the fuck are you?" Ron stammers that he just came by to return a pair of glasses. OJ says, "A pair of glasses? Really?" "Yes," says Ron, and OJ notices Ron is carrying an envelope. "Judy left them at the restaurant. I'm a waiter at Mezzaluma." OJ says, "Oh, so it's Judy, is it? You're on a first-name basis with Judy?" At that moment, Charlie walked in carrying the knife. Asking if everything was okay, he wanted to make sure that there was no trouble. Now, it's not mentioned in the book here, but Judy is Nicole's mother. She had left her glasses at the restaurant. Ron had agreed to bring them back. OJ says, "This motherfucker wants me to believe that he's just here dropping off a pair of Judy's glasses." Ron holds out the envelope to OJ and says, "I'm just dropping off glasses. Look for yourself." OJ says, "And then what? You're going to go back to the restaurant?" Ron says, "No, my shift's over. I'm dropping these off and then I'm going home." OJ, "You expect me to believe that?" Ron, "I don't expect anything. I'm telling you the truth." OJ, "You're a fucking liar. She's got candles burning inside, music playing, probably a nice bottle of red wine on the counter waiting for you. Ron, not for me. OJ, fuck you, man. You think I'm stupid or something? The door opens. Nicole steps outside. She's wearing a, quote, slinky little black cocktail dress with probably not much on underneath. Again, he's speculating about
exactly right. It's everything is the details that he speculates on, like they're fact, or there's a lot of like he's got a very proprietary feeling about somebody who he's not married to anymore.
Nicole, OJ, what the fuck is going on? OJ, that's what I want to know. At this point, the dog, Cato, walks out, wagging his tail in recognition to OJ. Then he wags his tail at Ron Goldman.
Dun, dun, dun. Obviously.
Well, that's the thing. It's laid out like this is a big dramatic thing. Like the dog recognizes Ron Goldman, so this can't be his first visit.
Based on the testimony of the dog, they've been having an affair for...
Which, by the way, if only that dog could have testified, huh? OJ looks at Goldman, furious, and Charlie moves in still closer, still holding the knife. OJ to Ron. I'm listening, motherfucker. Nicole. OJ, leave him the fuck alone. What are you doing here anyway? I thought you were going to Chicago. OJ. Fuck you. Ron. Hey, man, that's not necessary. Charlie. Let's just get the fuck out of here, OJ. OJ. I asked you a question, motherfucker. What are you fucking doing here? You delivering drugs? Nicole. Leave him alone, OJ. OJ. I hear half you assholes are dealing on the side. Nicole starts swinging at OJ and says, get the fuck out. This is my house and I can do what I want. OJ. Not in front of my kids, you can't. Nicole. Fuck you. OJ. No, fuck you. I gave you everything you could ask for and you fucked it all up. I love your deep sighs on some of the comments.
I mean, that's me going, he's just such an ass.
OJ says Nicole now at this point comes at him flailing, kicking and punching. OJ ducks, but because of this, Nicole falls hard onto the stoop on her right side. She lays there, not moving. So oopsie, she just fell down.
Right.
He had nothing to do with it.
Her own
In fact, he was only moving to defend himself.
Yep.
Charlie. Christ, OJ, let's get the fuck out of here. OJ looks at Goldman. And he says, guess he thought I was going to hit him because he got into his little karate stance.
Oh, God.
Yeah. OJ. What the fuck is that? You think you can take me with your karate shit? Goldman begins to circle OJ, bobbing and weaving. Quote, if I hadn't been so angry, I would have laughed in his face. All hypothetical, though, right?
It's all hypothetical.
Now, the thing about this is, OJ mentions that Charlie was standing between the gate and Ron. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that there was no Charlie. And that the rest of these... that the rest of this actually probably happened pretty much as OJ says, with the exception of Nicole just falling to the ground. It seems like most likely then Ron Goldman did try to step up and defend himself and perhaps Nicole after OJ had done something to cause her to fall to the ground. And also the thing to keep in mind is this is a very small area where this is happening. If you look at the crime scene photos, you can see that he's kind of closed in at this back gate. So he probably couldn't have just left if he wanted to. But this is another reason why he might have gone into a defensive stance, a karate stance, as OJ says. I don't know what his skills would have been, but, you know, OJ's a big guy. He is older now, but he's only in his 40s, so it's not like he's like an ancient old man. And he's got a knife, or Charlie does.
Yeah.
Charlie says, OJ, come on, man. Nicole wakes up at this point and moans, but she hardly moves. Charlie continues to beg OJ to leave. OJ sees the knife in Charlie's hand. He quickly takes off the glove from his hand and snatches the knife away from Charlie. Why do you have to take off the glove? I don't know. But he does mention that he did that. even in this hypothetical situation, he's not accusing the police of planting that evidence.
Right.
Anyway.
It's really bizarre.
OJ, we aren't going anywhere. To Goldman. You think you're a tough motherfucker? Charlie tries to stop OJ, but OJ shakes him off hard and closes in on Goldman. OJ, okay, motherfucker, show me how tough you are. Then something went horribly wrong. I know what happened, but I can't tell you exactly how, says OJ. He says everything went blank. I forgot where I was and what had just happened. He says he just kind of wakes up and he's standing in Nicole's courtyard covered in blood. Is it really blood? Whose is it? Is it mine? Am I hurt? And then he remembers the verbal argument. He looks down and he sees Nicole on the ground and Ron Goldman propped up against the fence, but not moving, and both are covered in blood. Who the fuck did this?
Oh my God.
And where was I when it all went down? I noticed the knife in my hand and my arm covered with blood. But how did it get this way?
Oh my God.
So we see even in the book, he doesn't tell you, like, the worst part of it.
Yeah.
He just mentions, like, an altercation, a skirmish, but he doesn't get into the knifing. He doesn't get into the part where he almost decapitates her. So OJ says, he looked up and he said, Charlie, what the fuck happened here? Charlie says, Jesus Christ, OJ, what have you done? Cato the dog comes out crying and moaning as he walks through Nicole's blood. OJ, let's get out of here. They exit through the back gate. OJ sees a trail of blood and he realizes it's coming from him. So he takes off all his clothes except for his socks and wraps the knife in the bundle. He gives explicit directions on how he drove home, street by street, including spotting the limo driver waiting for him and going around to hide from that limo driver and going through the neighbor's yard. But this is all hypothetical.
It's all hypothetical, but that part is
He wanted to factually
extraordinarily
tell you
detailed.
exactly how he got there, but hypothetically.
And it's detailed to the point of, like, it sounds like how people in Los Angeles talk about it's like, well, at the corner of such
That
and such
stupid
and such
Saturday Night
and
Live
such. Like,
sketch.
as though we know the intersection. Everyone in the world.
When they get back to OJ's house, OJ says, what happened back there, Charlie? Charlie only shrugs, and OJ thinks it was all just a bad dream and he's going to wake up. OJ says, Charlie, you're going to have to help me out here, man. You wait here until I get to the limo, then you park the Bronco and make this bundle disappear. I don't care how you do it, just make it disappear. OJ gets out of the car and walks through the neighbor's yard to get back to his own property past the guest house, where he bumps into the air conditioning unit, which Cato hears and describes as a thump, and he runs into OJ later on that night and they talk about the loud thump. Now, again, I want to point out, Charlie is given all this bloody clothes and he basically just helped commit a murder. Never to be heard from again in real life, nor in this fictional hypothetical account. That's it. That's all we hear about Charlie. He's just a guy that OJ had met twice casually, helped him commit a murder, and then just ran off in life.
Yeah. It was just two ships.
Now, I got to be honest with you. The rest of the book I wasn't as interested in. That was the part that I was interested in. So I took some notes, but nothing too crazy. He just goes upstairs and showers. He knows the limo driver's waiting for him. He lets the phone ring a few times without answering it, and then just wakes up and says, like, oh, I was just up here and I had fallen asleep and then I had to take a shower. He flies to Chicago on the flight. He mentions that his finger couldn't have been cut before this flight because fans came up and were admiring his Hall of Fame ring.
Oh, yeah.
So there was no way his finger could have been cut, although he contradicts that later on. We'll get to that. He falls asleep until he's woken up by the police calling to tell him that Nicole was dead. Now, in the book, he says that the police said that Nicole had been killed. And this is a big deal because at the trial, they made a big point of OJ. The cops says that they called to tell OJ Nicole was dead, and he says, who killed her? And they said, well, we didn't say that she was killed or anything. But OJ is saying, no, they said killed right from the get-go. OJ makes a bunch of phone calls. He tries to call the police. Of course, they're not taking his call for some reason, apparently, I guess. He says he tried to call the police. He tried to call Cato for some reason. He even says he doesn't know why he tried to call Cato, but he did. He gets a call from Nicole's sister and mother, and they are accusing him of murder, although he says the mother is largely unintelligible. He becomes upset, and he throws a glass when he's in the bathroom, and he says this must have been what cut my finger, although later on he'd claim that he must have cut it when he was chipping golf balls in his own yard earlier that day. Yeah. So he flies back home on the edge of panic. The lawyer is there to meet OJ at the airport because he'd heard that OJ was coming in, and this is OJ's lawyer. He wants OJ to go to his office. OJ refuses and insists on meeting the police at his home. He gets there, and it is crawling with press. He has the famous Louis Vuitton bag, which he gives to Robert Kardashian. He calls them the fucking bags, and he says it's all a whole lot of nothing, but the speculation is that the murder clothes and possible weapon may have been in that bag that disappeared and has been unaccounted for and sat for some time waiting to be investigated and never was. So we don't know whatever ended up happening with that bag. That was a big thing in the trial, but OJ says that was a whole lot of nothing, which I don't know how to feel about that, because I feel like the part about him stripping the clothes and bundling the knife, maybe that is what he did. I don't think he gave it to Charlie because I don't think Charlie exists. I think Charlie's the voice in OJ's head.
Right.
That was maybe trying to stop himself and, realizing the situation.
Yeah, or like the facility. I see it as his like scapegoat for it. Charlie told me to, but
yeah, but the whole time Charlie's saying no, don't do it, let's go home.
Yeah. And what do we know about chronic brain injury with O.J. Simpson?
That is something I think we should save for the end, but that's definitely worth talking about.
Yeah.
So OJ, once he gets home, he's cuffed, even though he's not under arrest, and he's pissed off, but he agrees to go to the police station with police and give a statement without his lawyer present. His first statement is that it's a little confusing because he says that he's never been to Nicole's house. Then he says he has been to her house just to pick up the kids. Then he says he's been inside the house and he slept there, but not in the past week, which is what he thought they were asking about, even though they said, have you ever been in the house? And he several times said, no, I've never been in the house. I think he eventually figured out, why do they keep asking me if I've been in the house? Maybe there's something in the house.
Because they know I've been in the house. Yeah.
So he's like, I've been there and I've slept there, but I've never been there. But yeah, I've been there, just not, I thought the past week.
I thought you meant in the last week. Yeah.
He's the first one to bring up him leaving blood all over the place. The police didn't bring that up. He brings that up. And then he says that he had cut his hand. He's got the cut on his hand. And he says that he must have done that when he was running around packing the night before. He does not mention throwing the glass at this point.
Right.
There's no mention of that at all.
It's really weird. I mean, it's like he's trying to...
It's like he's lying.
Well, yes, exactly. And badly. And in front of everybody.
I think the bottom line as far as OJ goes is that he thought that he was so popular, so charismatic, so charming, because he had been his whole life and people had been treating him this way, and he's a celebrity, that people wouldn't believe that he was capable of this and that he would just be able to talk his way out of it and just BS his way out of it like he'd been able to do with other things in his life.
Right.
I would say this is almost certainly the truth, because the whole rest of the book, he keeps saying that he couldn't believe people could actually think that he had committed this murder.
Yeah.
Because he had built up these good guy points in his own head.
Exactly.
And because he was such a football hero. So they take blood samples while he's at the police station. OJ then asks for some time alone, and they grant it to him, and he writes a suicide note during this time. Even in that note, he claims that he's innocent, and he later gives that note to Robert Kardashian, telling him to read it after. Mm-hmm. And Robert says, after what? And he says, you'll know after. And actually, I think I got to clear something up. I'm in my note there. It made it sound like this was the same day that they took the blood and that he gave his first statement. I don't think it was the same day. I think several days had passed. He had gone to Nicole's funeral, so I think a few days had passed.
Okay.
He went to, I believe this was the Kardashians, if I remember correctly, home where his kids were staying. They were staying there. And yes, this is the Kardashians. And he's talking to the kids, and the kids already know that Nicole is dead and in heaven. And he was surprised because he thought he was going to be the one to break it to them.
More of his same, just like it's all about the effect on him.
So at this point, he goes back to his own home, and there's a bunch of people there. It's all a big, confusing story. You can watch a million documentaries about it. Al, AC, Cowling is there at the house. This is an old friend of OJ's, and OJ says, let's go. And AC follows him outside. They get in AC's Bronco. They both have Broncos. Gotta love those Broncos. Yep. OJ sits in the back so that he can close his eyes and kind of stay hidden. They try to go to Nicole's house because that's where OJ says he wants to go. But it is crowded by investigators, press, and gawkers. And why would he want to go there in the first place?
Right. I don't know. That strange compulsion of killers to return to the scene of the crime.
Uh-huh. He asks AC to drive to Nicole's grave. And he says he wanted to do this as like a final goodbye to her. After this, they drive into an orange grove so that they can stay hidden, and even you can't see them in a helicopter. AC gets out to pee, and while he's out, OJ takes out a gun and contemplates suicide because he's hurting so bad.
Oh, God.
Now, he's just about to do it when he hears Dan Rather on the news reporting that OJ had a long history of beating Nicole and that he had a long history with the police department coming to his house. So he says, this isn't true. How could people think this of me? Again, very concerned with his own reputation and image as like Mr. Charming good guy.
Right.
And he says his mood changed from suicidal to angry. AC gets back in the car and OJ, he sees OJ has got the gun and AC starts to freak out. OJ demands to be taken home. AC calls the cops and tells them OJ is coming home. The police are immediately seen, and now they're following the Bronco. AC is freaked out, and he slows down to a crawl to let the police know, hey, we're not trying to get away. AC wanted to pull over, but OJ held the gun to his head, so AC told the cops, hey, keep back because OJ is on the edge. He is surrounded when he gets to his home. OJ calls 911 from the back of the car and requests that the police back off, which they do. OJ gets out and is given a chance to go inside and freshen up. What the fuck?
I know.
And yet they railroaded him, and it's all because he's a black guy. And, you know, it's like, meanwhile, he's given every special privilege.
I know.
Also, he leaves out the part about the fake mustache.
Oh, God. I mean, wouldn't you?
He had brought a fake mustache with him because, I mean, the real speculation is that he was going to Mexico, right?
Right.
That was the idea.
You know, you just throw in a fake mustache. I mean, I do it all the time.
Yes. Oh, no, my name is Senor Simpsano. So I don't know what the full plan was there, but apparently they gave up on that. But I'm just surprised he doesn't mention it in this tell-all book.
I just had it for when I'm golfing, and I got to have a fake mustache.
Yeah, so that's basically where the book ends. He does talk about going to jail and having his mugshot taken, but, you know, he then ends with a loving quote from Nicole about how badly she wanted to get back together with him and how there was no couple like them. And he agrees with that sentiment. And that is the end of his version of If I Did It. And then, of course, we get the afterword by Dominic Dunn, who's like, yeah, this guy's full of shit, and this book is baffling, which I kind of agree with. The fact that it got written at all, and written and canceled and then set out again, but this time by the Goldman family. And then this book was going to be released under Regan Books, which is owned by Judy Regan, right? But at the time that the book was going to be released, she personally recorded an interview with OJ. But this interview was not released because the book was not released. And they finally released it just last year, the end of last year, I think, on Fox. And it was called The Lost Confession with a question mark. And that became big news. Did you see that interview?
I did not watch the interview. I saw that it had happened, but I didn't watch it.
You should definitely check it out. He goes on to describe it there too. But again, he is saying it's hypothetical. But as he's telling the story, he oftentimes says, I don't remember if it was, if this happened or this happened, but I know that I ended up at the back gate. This is just an example, not an exact quote.
No, I do know
but this is the kind of thing.
I did watch that one.
And it was like, wait, if it's hypothetical, why would you have to remember something?
Exactly.
Or why would you say you don't remember something? So he's full of shit. I mean, he was found innocent, and he can. It's my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Although I know you're not a criminal lawyer. Once you are found innocent, then you can't be tried again for murder, even if you come out and say, "Hey, I killed the bitch."
That is my understanding.
I'm sure there might be something else that they could try to get him on, like maybe lying on the, to the grand jury, or there might be some charge that they could trump up to try to, get him if he did that.
That's one that you kind of struggle with in a case where not necessarily like this one, but let's say, somebody had been tried and acquitted, and then you later developed DNA technology determined it really was that person. Like, it's hard to know if you would feel okay about that. Or I would.
Well, I think the DNA evidence was pretty clear on this one, but it didn't seem to matter.
But yeah.
I mean, the case is a whole nother story, which we could get into another time. But I think there's been enough said and written and enough documentaries made about that. But it is a very interesting case for many, many reasons.
I mean, at no point in his book does he even consider looking for a real killer, quote unquote.
No, he doesn't. Killer. Although he did say he was going to do that.
Yep.
And the joke is that he's been doing it on every golf course.
Yeah, exactly.
In the land since, aside from that little bit of time he spent in prison. On unrelated charges.
Oh my God, he's such an ass. His quote, "If we had a problem, it was that I loved her so much." Yeah. Really stuck with me in a creepy fashion.
But the thing is, in his own twisted mind, I bet he does believe that.
Oh yeah, and that he was entitled to do what he did. Well, should we jump then to the possibility of a brain condition for OJ?
Yeah, we should, because that is something I want to talk about, and I want to make sure we get that on. Yeah, with everything that we know about concussions, and it makes me think of the Chris Benoit family murder. Chris Benoit was a professional wrestler. He definitely had brain injuries, had severe concussions. His finishing move was jumping off the top rope, the turnbuckle, and headbutting essentially someone lying on the floor, and he would take the full force of this jump on his head, which, as you can imagine, is not the healthiest thing in the world for you. And by all accounts, literally everybody that you hear talk about him, he was one of the nicest, coolest guys, and loved his family, and everybody thought he was great. Now that doesn't mean that he really was. It could be that there was a dark side that people didn't know. But it could also be that he really was that great, and he had this brain injury which twisted up his thinking and caused him to murder his wife and young child. And himself.
I mean, I don't want to offer OJ any excuses.
It's not a get out of jail free card.
No, it's not. Yeah, but to me, it's more, a reason I wouldn't let my kids play football, I guess. At the end of the day, or and I wouldn't let them headbutt people off the top rope either if I had any say about it. I mean, there's just a lot that's sad about this. Like, if that little line of speculation is true, it's sad. Ron Goldman was only 25 years old, and had met Nicole 6 weeks before this happened.
Now that okay, I'm interested that you bring that up, because when I was a kid, I always thought, and I guess maybe this was just speculation in my own mind, but I think a lot of people had the same thought that I did, was that there was some kind of relationship between him and Nicole, but there isn't really proof of that as far as I know.
Right. And that's the impression that I had at the time too, was that, like, it seemed to me when this happened, like these people were all grown-ups, and I don't know, it struck me in a different way, but he was, according to what I saw, he's 25 years old. He was almost 26. He worked at the restaurant. She had met him 6 weeks prior to the murder. Somehow he wound up borrowing her car, and it sounds like they hung out a lot, but it doesn't seem like it was a romantic relationship. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That's not really even relevant. But like, he, but for having met her in that 6 week period, he would be a 52-year-old man right now.
Yeah. It's crazy. So that's it, Susan, I think, right? We covered everything OJ had to say in If I Did It, if he wrote it.
Hypothetically, because keep in mind, people at home, this is all hypothetical.
Yeah. So, so the ghostwriter says, yes, I wrote the book, but it was based on my conversations with OJ and what he told me, and he had final approval. This is the version that he approved.
Correct.
So that is what the ghostwriter says. But who do you want to believe more?
The ghostwriter.
O.J. Simpson or this writer. So it's up to you to decide. Again, I recommend that you skip the whole, first third of the book and just get to the end. That's the stuff you want to know about, unless you want to hear about every little argument that they had.
It's really tedious.
All right, Susan. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And it's been a long episode, so I'm going to do this quickly. Please check out spookyas.com or spookyasshit.com. Look for us on the social medias. That is at spookyasshit on both Twitter and Instagram. We are at, facebook.com/spookyas. Join the Spookaroos while you're there. Don't forget the GoFundMe, gofundme.com/spookaroos19. Hey, my birthday's coming up on June 24, so feel free to make that your little birthday shout out to me. Like I said, every little bit helps, even if it's only $1. It does help. So go ahead, chip in and help improve the show and help me struggle along through this life. It's probably a better way to say that, but I'll fix it later.
We're all just trying to get by.
Yeah. All right, so I think that covers everything. Thanks once again, Susan. And for the rest of you, until next time, don't be afraid.